Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh to some of you and peace out to the rest of you. The blackest hearted, blackest minded, blackest man on social media is signing, blacking and shining again, asking you to hit the share button because the message is more important than the messenger. And that being said, this message is a response to MACK coming from 82 Kings. 82 Kings is the name of the YouTube channel. MACK is music, art, culture, and knowledge. And the MACK that runs that channel is actually somebody that I met when I was in graduate school, and I think he was an undergrad in Atlanta. I was training to be a teacher. And Mac, it's good to see you on video again. I have to say, you don't look a day older now than you did when we bumped into each other the first time. I can't remember which class we had, to be honest, but I think it was a history class because I was training to be a history teacher at the time. And you and I met about 2007 or 2008. Maybe it was 2009, but no, I think it was 2007 or 2008 when we met. And I'll tell you that when we met, you look now just like you did back then. To answer your question, I'll go straight to it and I'll say that your friend who listened to one of my videos and said that I was divisive is absolutely correct. I am pro-black, or I was pro-black. Now I'm pro-black male. I've had to go through this change because, frankly, I didn't have a choice based on what I knew. And I'll describe in a nutshell what I've learned. Now, before you and I met, 2001, I had been treated differently pretty much by black women I noticed it from 1989 onwards. From 1990, it was clear to me, I'm being treated differently. And I just can't shake that. And I initially attributed it to something I must not know. First, in middle school, you don't really attribute it to yourself. And I didn't really blame myself much either, except for things I just didn't know about them. But as I got older, I realized, wait a minute, other men don't have to know them as well as I do. Something's odd about this. Other men get to know less about them and learn, whereas I have to know more about them from the very beginning. And as I got older, I realized that the things that I was doing, I wasn't doing anymore. As I got older, of course, you learn, well, this doesn't work with anybody, so you stop. But what I came to understand was that I was being treated differently involuntarily. I reached an age in which I knew more than enough to make sure that I didn't provoke that and I was still being treated differently. And it was not differently as in better. It was treated differently as in worse. If you were with a woman and she got a phone call from a dude and she didn't want to answer it, I was not the guy she was with. Now, maybe the first phone call, I might have been the dude that called, but that's only one call. The point I'm making is that I was the one, they were pretty much showing me that I was the one that they thought would be good husband material for years later. And I didn't know how much of an insult that was. Because they weren't waiting for husbands. They were riding a cock carousel. I wasn't aware of that. I didn't find out until 2001 the reason that I had been treated differently by them. And you and I met later. By the time you and I met, I was Muslim, I was married. I had been told by black women that I was treated differently because of my shade. Because of my phenotype. I had been told by 3 different women. 2 explained it. 1 really explained it in depth. The 3rd one messed around and confirmed it accidentally. She didn't mean to. Ironically, she was trying to tell me that I should just settle for whoever liked me. I shouldn't have standards. That's really what she was trying to tell me. The discussion started because she wanted to know what Muslims do about dating and how do Muslims go about getting married. And I told her, and she was like, so you probably can't wait to marry then. And I said, I can't rush to it and I can't run away from it. I have to be neutral about it. Got to be responsible. So that started this whole discussion, and I said to her that when you become Muslim, the search it doesn't become automatically smoother. And so that led to this discussion. And in the midst of her trying to tell me that I was simply less attractive than I thought I was, and that I should sit up and just settle for whoever wanted me, she wound up confirming for me accidentally that I was being treated differently by African American women because of my phenotype. So at that point, I said, well, I'm not going to blame sisters for wanting more original men, because as a pro-black, you can't blame them for that. The problem is that I was not going to accept that I could trust them to tell the truth about what they wanted. So in my mind, women in general were not liars, but they were too secretive for their own good. And I understood why God promised Muslims various wives in paradise. I understand it now. To be honest with you, without that, there would be no justice even in paradise. Because they're really screwed up here on this planet, but you take the West and they're even more screwed up. So knowing what I know now, today, which is a lot more than what I knew even in 2008. Oh, by the way, when you and I met, I was Muslim, married, and I didn't tell anybody this, but I was effing miserable. Terribly miserable. I should not have married her. And the funny thing is, everybody else that I could have married was even worse than her. So as miserable as I was, the others were even far worse, and I would have been even more miserable. And I can't sit up and say it was because of me. See, to answer your question, like you, so we both came up in households where our parents were together, and you and I are both close to our fathers. And we adore our fathers, and our fathers adore us. You and I both have that. As a matter of fact, I dreamt about him a few hours ago, because as I'm recording this, it's early morning here. In a nutshell, we both have that. And we've seen this example of our dads being dedicated to our mothers. We've seen that. And we unfortunately came up in a context in which seeing that good example would be an advantage, but the women that surrounded us did not come up with that. The boys and the girls that surrounded us did not necessarily come up with that, and those who did could not sit up and say that that was the prevailing culture. So consequently, we learned something that works in a context in which we would never be allowed to make it work. I got married and I was miserable, effing miserable. You've not been married, and unfortunately, they won't even treat you like they treat other men if they know that you are husband material. You don't have to be a pipsqueak. You don't have to be Steve Urkel. You don't have to be socially awkward. Being stable enough to be husband material means that you get treated worse while you're young than other men do that are not husband material, that they'll tell you aren't husband material. What they want to do, now we know this, is they want that dual mating strategy. They want to ride the cock carousel and be sluts and hoes while they're young. Try to hide it from guys like you and me, and from really a lot of men, even men who didn't come up with both parents. They just want to hide it from guys, most guys, they want to hide that from, so that they can have a bunch of inexperienced men so they can use them to retire from their hoe phase. That's what that comes down to. So that being said, Mac, your friend is right. I am divisive. Like Jesus said in Matthew 10, it was verse 34 through 36, I think. He said, "Do not think that I came to bring peace on the earth. I did not come to bring peace, but a sword. I came to set a man against his father, and a daughter against a mother, and a daughter-in-law against a mother-in-law, and a man's enemies will be the members of his household." And in Luke, I can't remember exactly the verses, but in Luke, I remember it's Luke 12 and Luke 22. He said, "Do you suppose that I came to bring peace on earth? I tell you, no, but I came to bring division. From now on, 5 members of one household will be divided, 3 against 2 and 2 against 3. And he says, "But now let him who has a purse take it, Likewise also a bag, and let him who has no sword sell his robe and buy one. Now understand that what he was talking about was, in a nutshell, he was talking about the division between those who believe in him and those who don't, really between those who believe in God, who sent him, and those who don't, even more importantly, which is what gives him his validity. And so he's coming with a moral criteria because that's what prophets do, let alone a Messiah. They come with a moral criteria, and there will be people who will not observe this moral criteria. Except maybe the bare minimum, but they will not check themselves. So what we're seeing is already that. What I'm seeing is that in the society, the men are held accountable when we have control and when we don't. In the same society, the women are not really held accountable to the same standard. And so and right now what we're seeing is that the women are reveling in their power. They choose, my body, my choice, everything is a choice, but then there's no accountability for the choices they make. They duck that. And you see this as a pattern when you look at Jada Pinkett Smith at her Red Table Talk with her husband. She said it was an entanglement. So she's trying to duck accountability with softer language. Bitch, you committed adultery. You cheated on your husband. And if the rumors of an open relationship were true, then the question would be, why did he look hurt? If the rumors are true, why did he look hurt? That meant that there was an agreement they had that she broke. Whether it's not an open relationship to begin with, or they've got one of these open relationships, but there were some boundaries they agreed on and she broke them. Like, we're not sleeping with none of our kids' friends, for instance. Well, August Alsina was a friend of their children. And all it really came down to was that August Alsina apparently took an underwear pic showing his junk. So whatever demons he was wrestling with, she decided to try to soothe those demons with her vagina. And I'm just not going to sit up and say, well, that's okay. Because see, the rumors of them having an open relationship are rumors. The marriage is public. So I got to go by what's not speculative before what's speculative. And what's not speculative is they're married. And she admitted that she cheated. She just wanted to call it something else. Now, after trying to duck accountability, you see her say, in the same interview, well, I'm the only one that could give permission. Okay, so she's the gatekeeper to this. She has the accountability. So what the women want to do is be able to sit up and say, well, we control sex and it's guilt-free for us, but it's not guilt-free for the men, even though they don't get to control it. We're the gatekeepers to it. Then when they find out that men and women are the gatekeepers to marriage, and mostly men are the ones that have less interest in getting married, then they want to still put that on the men too. Well, y'all ain't men, y'all ain't stepping up. That's not the way that works. So what I'm saying is a complete societal shift, because a lot of men think this way as well. We think in ways that are advantageous to the women and disadvantageous to ourselves. Now, since I know what I know, I came to bring that sword. I am divisive. Your friend is right. I'm pro-black male. I was pro-black, and I still have Pan-African leanings. I still want to see our race continue amongst other races. I mean, either everybody mixes or nobody does. That's what I'm saying. If everybody's going to blend, then that's not really anything personal. But frankly, I'd rather see our race continue. And I don't think that we're going to vanish as a race, biologically speaking, anytime soon anyway. But what I also want to point out is this, and that is that right now, to be honest with you, he thinks I'm against women. He's right about me being against Western women. That's true. That includes the Western black woman. Now, I never expected anything from the Western white woman except what we got historically. False accusations, lynchings, and whatever the hell they could use us for. They're just a little slicker about it, but I never expected anything different. When it comes down to it, the betrayal came from our own. See, treachery never comes from the enemy, from the opposition. So I frankly look at sisters and I say, okay, cuss word, why are you siding with white supremacy against us? Like that lady whose video I sent you, Ayana, she calls herself Goddess Ayana. She obviously ain't no goddess, she's a human being. And she's sitting up talking about, clear as day, talking about, you need to be more alpha like those guys in prison. You don't have alpha energy like they do. And that's why you can't attract women and you're just mad. Well, to be honest with you, Mac, this is something that Western women have been saying every time men call them out on their BS. Men have historically actually not gotten with women, truth be told. The human species, according to Jordan Peterson, the human species, when the DNA is analyzed, has twice as many female ancestors as male ancestors. Now, individually, everyone must have an equal number of both. But as a species, we have half as many male ancestors as we do female ancestors because they've been weeding out half the men. You could count the men who died in childhood, or rather the boys that died in childhood. You could count that. But at the end of it all, has it ever been half? Has it been like that? Not quite. It's not the usual infant mortality rate throughout. So what's wound up happening has not been that you've had just the shortage of men, but even with the shortage of men, adult men that societies have particularly had, you still had women that were sitting up and eliminating a lot of the men. And in today's time, we understand, I mean, if you look at simply black folks alone, about 52 to 51% of adult black males don't have any kids and have never been married. 80% of women uniformly die with children. Now, 52 and 51% of black adult men not having children and not being married is actually consistent with another stat, which is about half of men die without having any kids. 80% of women have children before they pass away. If there's a shortage of men in most societies and women outnumber the men as adults, then where's this coming from? That means that you got a bunch of women who want the same few men. So these are the same women that'll sit up and tell you that they ain't down with polygyny, but then you introduce polyandry and they're okay with it. And I'm seeing hypocrisy coming from women to whom we've been pretty close. Well, women to whom I've been pretty close. I've seen hypocrisy come from women that acted like the proverbial wise black mother. Okay, you start throwing some wisdom at them, they don't want to hear it. Oh, but you're the wise black mother. See, at the end of it all, your friend is partially right, but it's not because of hatred. It is because of accountability and just outright fairness. And what I have to admit from what I know is this. It is not the black man that drove the black woman away. We did not betray them. We did not oppress them. What we did was not have enough in terms of wealth and resources for them. That's what happened. And that's what frustrated them. There have been individual black men that went through certain struggles. Usually the root of them was financial because we were dealing with a racist job market, and we still are. I'll never forget that manager that looked at you and said, you know, there's nothing like a black gay man in corporate America. And then he kept looking at you as if waiting on you to get the hint and say, okay, I'll be gay. I'll never forget that manager that said that to you. I hope he burns a very I hope he dies of cancer, AIDS, syphilis, gonorrhea, and everything else just for trying to drop that hint to you. Painfully. Because they still are trying to go against heterosexual black men to a certain extent. That lady Ayana that was talking, she was right about the system to a certain extent being against that. But in spite of that, actually 62% of black men are making it to the made it to the middle class. Now, for me, because I was outspoken, I had to leave the United States to make it there. But that wasn't necessarily black men's fault. When black men have screwed up or have been problematic, they have been individuals. And that's the truth of the matter. When sisters have been screwing up and playing games with black men, they have done it as a majority. And the reason I know this is that we don't know who ends the majority of relationships that are not marriages. We don't know. I heard a guess once that it was 50-50. But when it comes to marriages, they file for divorce between 70 to 80% of the time. It's the women that file for divorce once it's a marriage. The same marriage they pressure men for, but will never get down on the knee and propose for, or almost never. That same marriage is what they file to end. It's everything they want that's driving this. And so in a nutshell, they're the ones that have been holding the cards and holding the power, and therefore they have the accountability, but they won't take that. And that's why I say, okay, the Western woman is lost, black or white, she's lost. Black men, here's the answer though, Mac. For black people, period. The only way we're going to continue is to stop pursuing Western women in general. That's it. We can't pursue them anymore. They need to have their junk together and then come pursue us. We already know they're not going to do that. Because in general, women don't pursue men. A lot of them don't even know how. So for all they talk about how men don't know how to approach them, don't know how to treat them, don't know how to make them happy, don't know how to keep them, don't know how to stay married to them, all that talk, they don't know how to approach men. For all their talk and their judgment of men's game, they have no game because they've never had to. The only thing I hold men accountable for is that we never demanded the same things of them they demanded of us. We let them distract us with them making us so busy trying to meet their demands that we never thought to have demands in exchange for the ones we had to meet. So we got to be taller, richer, stronger, older, and smarter than they are. Okay, well then that means that they come to us. Like by definition, they have to be younger, shorter, weaker, stupider, and poorer than we are by definition. That's how you have a relationship. So what are they bringing to the table then? Okay, nothing, literally nothing but TNA. Because they've already said, I ain't going to cook and I ain't going to clean and you going to give me a ring. They've already insisted on that. They're quoting Cardi B, and she was on videotape sweeping. Her husband was making a joke about it. But at the end of the day, it comes down to they ain't going to cook, they ain't going to clean. You're going to get him a ring. So they're literally bringing nothing but TNA to the table. But if you accept the deal that's that bad, they lose respect for you. There goes the sex. So now they're bringing nothing to the table. But if you leave them, they're going to take half, depending on what kind of provider you were during the marriage. So I kid you not, they have literally made all of this nothing but a bad deal for you, me, and any other responsible black man. I mean, the only men out there that don't get really a bad deal are the men that the women just want to use for sex. And how rare is that? Those are the only men that aren't getting an outright insulting deal offered to them at this point. And even then, a lot of times in order to use one guy for sex, they still demand that some other man be their stability, the husband, so to speak. So they have disincentivized being a responsible man as far as they are concerned. Yeah, your friend's right. I'm divisive as hell, and I only hold men accountable for the things over which we had adequate control and knowledge. And the one reason I don't hold us morally accountable, only procedurally accountable for being too easy for women, is that we didn't have the knowledge. We had older men telling us you better take what you can get. That's what we had older men saying to us. When we were coming up, men didn't tell us to be chaste, to not be sexually cheap and easy. No one told us that. And it's so ingrained now that if a female teacher is inappropriate with a male student, the sentencing is less. A male teacher can go to prison if a female student comes on to him, and it is the only chance he's ever going to get up in some drawers. He's going to prison, and they're going to kill him in prison if he gets out of protective custody. End of story. He's going to register as an offender for the rest of his life. But as a matter of fact, if a female student ties a male teacher down and violates him, he's going to prison. It's that ingrained in us. It's a hatred, man. That's a type of contempt that society's been taught to have towards men and not towards women, no matter what women do. But when female teachers do the same thing with male students, we're trained to say, well, that's okay because he's a guy, and it's not really going to impact him as much. So your friend needs to listen, if not to me, fine. He needs to listen to Professor T. Hassan Johnson, Dr. Tommy J. Curry, The Green Gorilla, and Ronald Neal on YouTube. He should binge listen, and he'll understand where I'm coming from. Because knowing the games that they play, bruh, in all honesty, I would venture this. Because of the games that women play, especially Western women play with men in general. When we find out what these games are, which takes a long time to find out a lot of times, the next question that comes up is, why the hell didn't mom just come out and tell me these are the games women play instead of just disliking every woman that I liked? That becomes the next question. How come moms think no woman's good enough for their son instead of just telling the sons these are the games women play? And the answer to that question, bro, was actually answered by a woman named Jessica X on YouTube. She was on Game Changers live stream. And she said, because and my own mother told me this when I was talking about my son. They both said the same thing. My mother told me face to face, and Jessica X said it online. The reason these women don't tell their sons and their nephews and their younger brothers the games to watch out for from women is because they have to tell on themselves to do it. So they would rather that no man knows, even the men related to them, so that they can play the game on some guy, than for men to know what these things are, enough to where their sons could keep themselves safe or demand in exchange something similar. That's what's going on. And that's why I got to be like this. Your friend's right, unfortunately. We can't mess with Western black women, or white women for that matter. But if we're going to continue the race, we can only do it with black women that are not Western and not Westernized. End of story. I could tell you some countries in the continent are already out. Southern Nigeria, done. South Africa in the major cities, done. Feminism and misandry, they've already creeped into those areas. I don't even know about Uganda. I'm not sure what to make. But I mean, I could tell you that's the continent could go either way in the long haul. But right now, certain parts of it are already lost. And for the cats that like North Africa, Egypt's done with. That feminism's strong there. So, of course, most of them ain't black, but I'm simply saying that even in that conservative part of Africa, it's that bad. So, yeah, man, I'm just going to go ahead and say that in a nutshell, bro, we can continue our people, and we will, but it can only be with non-Western black women. And in order to stop the spread of this misandric brand of feminism, we would have to go into these areas where they're still feminine and pretty and treat you well, and then reward them for the good behavior and make it very plain that they won the competition because they would remain feminine and not feminist. That they would treat us fairly and actually treat us well, so that if we have to pay the cost, then we are the boss. Making that plain as day. And that the women who go that feminist route, they're going to lose. It is not a question of us wanting to oppress women. It never was. Black men ain't been into that. But in actuality, we're the ones that have had to worry about treachery from our own, because if you read this book, Daughters of the Trade, and you may have already read it, ironically written by a woman from the mayonnaise mafia, she was able to bring receipts for what she said. That was the sad thing about it. She was able to show that if anything, there had never been a solidarity that sisters had with black men at any point, not even back on the continent. And to a certain extent, you'll see that even now, because on the continent, man, a lot of them would jump at the chance to be with a white dude. So I don't even know how much of an opportunity the continent will afford for us to continue our own people. I know the English-speaking Caribbean is a no-go zone at this point. Belize and Guyana, which are not technically Caribbean nations, they're not island nations, but even Belize and Guyana, over with. Trinidad and Tobago, done for. Bahamas, done for. Jamaica, done for. They've already said it. People from these places have told me it's bad there. You ain't gonna find nobody good over there. I'm not saying that there don't exist good women there. The question is, are you going to find them? Because as you and I know, however rare they say that successful men are, good women are even rarer, and they get snatched up quickly, like that. You meet someone that's good and attractive, she's already with somebody. You and I know that. We've seen that happen. So No, this problem that's going on between the genders is not the fault of us. You can blame white men, you can blame white women, you can blame black women, you cannot blame black men. And that's why I seem so one-sided and so self-righteous about this, because historically speaking, that's what shakes out. The demographic that had the least to do with creating this problem was the black male. In the long run, it was the black male. We didn't legislate the situation to what it is in the courts, and we didn't engineer the culture to what it is right now. We just perpetuated the BS. Man, you better take what you can get, bruh. You better get as much draws as you can, man. That's how you play the game. That's us. All we did was perpetuate that. But even then, that was given to us. That was told to us. So I think I've said enough. I'm sorry for going on for so long, man, but appreciate that. Thanks for reaching out. And I hope it helps and explains things to your friends. And truth be told, look, if black women who have their stuff together are not treating him like the rare diamond he is, he don't need to make no more approaches. Straight up. It's like, it's that bad. Because Western women in general, white or black, are entirely too judgmental of the men. Not because they have standards, but because their standards are unrealistic. And they don't stop to think that we're not bringing the same standards for them to meet. Like as a whole, I mean most normal men. Only the top earners are the ones that are really hard to please, so to speak. So he's got to sit back and see this for what it is. That's what it really comes down to. I'm not bitter because I was treated differently. I'm bitter mostly because I was lied to about what it was. That was a real thing. But hell, since then, man, I've been married happily twice, actually. Both of them are from the continent. Both of them have spoiled me and treated me well. The one to whom I am married now spoils the stew out of me. The one to whom I was married before did so as long as we were together, and it was a government that messed that up. We didn't split because of her or me. It was neither one's fault. But that American woman, she drove me off. Drove me the hell away. Demanded that I pay all the cost to be the boss. When I finally made enough to pay the cost to be the boss, she didn't want to accept that I was the boss. And that's a Muslima. And that's about as much as I could say. But needless to say, I was miserable a lot of the time I was married. And that's with her helping me do a lot of stuff. I was still miserable because all of the help came with a hell of a price. So I myself am not even bitter for myself anymore. But your friend's going to be right when he starts saying, well, you know, that black heart dude, he bitter as hell. He's right about that, but I'm not bitter about me. I'm bitter on your behalf. I'm bitter on his behalf, actually. I'm bitter on behalf of any sons y'all might not have even had yet. I'm bitter on behalf of what my son's got to face over there. I'm bitter because, in a nutshell, all you Western black men, and white men go through this too, but you know what? Their society deserves this. They caused the problem, good for them. But all Western black men, for the most part, are being told, you must be Superman just to qualify for a regular run-of-the-mill Lois Lane that's always in need of a rescue. And that's not fair to y'all. So my goal, if your friend thinks I'm bitter now, wait till he hears me say this. My goal is not to just open men's eyes. My goal is to open the eyes of young boys to this game. My goal is for young boys to start their first day of middle school knowing what the games are as much as a middle school could understand, as much as a middle schooler could understand it. My game is for them to go in as mentally well-armed as these little girls have been sent into their first days of middle school with all these warnings about boys. That's my goal. My goal is for these guys to start their first days from middle school so aware that there ain't no games that these women could play on them. Unless they can play the same games on these women. I don't care if it causes the species, let alone the race, but the species to die out. I don't feel a guck when it comes to that. It is not okay for males to hit the sexual market at a disadvantage because they're males. But they got to do all the providing and protecting, and there's nothing in exchange for that. because there's nothing the women have to do. You ask a lady what she brings to the table in exchange for what she says a man has to bring to the table. I'm the table. It start with the neck rolling, head wagging, and I'm the table. Yeah, you the table, all right. You about the size of 4 tables. With all your demands and your 5 kids by 8 different baby daddies. And look at the dating profile sites, man. I mean, dating site profiles that they got. They old, they got some other men's, not even some other man's, but some other men's kids. As much as a bunch of them are chasing after the same few men, you look at above a certain age, they're all old, and well, of course, above a certain age, they're going to be old, but most of them are on these dating sites past a certain age, with another men's kids and wrinkles and extra pounds, not in the butt or in the bust, but in that gut. Just big. I'm fluffy. Bitch, you fat. And then they'll tell you I'm a mother this many. I'm looking for a real man that ain't gonna play no games. So this is what I'm saying to you, that you have to come and meet standards that the baby daddies didn't have to meet, because they just nutted up in it for nothing. I mean, if they some ain't S ninjas right now, how did they get up in them drawers? But you got to be a real man, not about no games. That's why I'm bitter on your behalf. And that's why I say F the game. They say don't hate the player, hate the game. Okay, fine, I hate the game. I'm here to do like Jesus did in that money in that temple. Kick the money changers' tables over with a sword. And if you don't get out the way, I'm gonna cut you too. I don't mean you personally, I mean like what he was doing with the money changers. He kicked the tables over first. When the people scattered, he was already swinging a sword. He would have killed someone if they had stayed still. I'm here to kick that game over. Because it's rigged. And I don't play rigged games like that. Nor do I tell someone else it's not a rigged game, you can go ahead and do it. I say, no, it's a rigged game. Let me kick this table over. Now we're going to start over from scratch with what we all know right now. That's bad news for women that planned on living off of men. Especially women that planned on riding a cock carousel, going through a whole phase, and still living off a man later. That's a losing proposition for them. What they gonna do? If they go through a whole phase, they can't find a husband. If I have my way, you can't find a husband after you go through a whole phase. You F me, that's it. I would say the same both ways. It's just that men can't really go through a whole phase. Unless, of course, you're Jason Roger Pope, DJ Kid in Florence County, South Carolina, who went through 600 or 700, including underage chicks. Now, that wannabe ninja, Master's grandson, he could go through a whole phase if he was willing to spread it amongst sisters. He could do it because sisters won't let him go through a whole phase. I mean, 700 of them wouldn't tell him no. You see what I'm saying? Men can't go through whole phases like that. Right now, what's going on is you got a few dudes that got really high body counts of women. Most women got high body counts from these same few men, and then most men got really low body counts. The average man's going to have 3 sexual partners in his life. It's not the same for women. And it doesn't have to be. So, yeah, the game's rigged, and now we're seeing the effects of it. And I'm one of many actually, that's fighting back and saying, look, I'm not going to allow race loyalty to ruin the sexual market. So I'm going to tell on you, and I'm going to tell the world on you. Thanks for listening, man. I appreciate that. And to the rest of my audience, black heart, black mind, blackout, assalamu alaikum, and black heterosexual non-select male power just because they don't like it, and black patriarchy until extinction of judgment day.